Marie Antoinette Potier had a very unique childhood because her mother died when she was 5 months old. Her father was a baker, and so with his commitments, and there were 5 other children, she was sent to live with her great aunt. In addition to homemaking duties, her aunt looked after the needs of the parish, including the sick and the poor. Growing up, Toinette visited and tended to the sick, worked for the needs of the poor, assisted in the care of the church, and taught catechism to young children. Father Jean-Pierre Vanier, her great-uncle, was also a great influence and provided her with an abundance of love and guidance. Marie Antoinette Potier's great-aunt died in March of 1854, and she left her the entire estate, the house, the vineyards, the orchards. Marie Antoinette Potier really felt that all of those resources should be put to use for the good of the parish. She welcomed children into her home and provided a suitable place for a parish school. The most inspirational, I think, factor to me with Marie Antoinette and her life was her intense desire to realize that she was always in the presence of God.
I have always said that I would find good in everyone who could come to our house to help me to do something for the glory of God.
This was the beginning of a new community. In France in 1854, Marie Antoinette Potier, whom we now call Mother Magdalene, founded the Sisters of the Humility of Mary to teach young girls in rural parishes and to care for the sick in their homes. Mother Magdalene suffered from tuberculosis and died 3 months before her entire community set out for America in May of 1864. Led by Sister Anna Tabarrah, a close companion and co-worker of Marie Antoinette, the sisters took over an uncultivated plot of land for their mother house and ministered to French settlers in Louisville, Ohio. Suffering and hardship marked the beginning of their American ministry. The sisters, without the knowledge of the English language, took care of orphans, struggled to grow crops, and cleared the land. A smallpox epidemic broke out in New Bedford, Pennsylvania, and since our sisters were used to caring for those victims, they did the same thing there. They really went into the homes, took care of the adults, and the children they brought to the convent to take care of them. In the 1870s, the railroad was being built in western Pennsylvania. Mother Anna set up a sawmill to process needed railroad ties, and with the money they made, she adapted 2 rooms to serve as a clinic. Later, they erected a large building near the convent to serve as a hospital for injured and ill railroad workers. This first hospital in Mahoning Valley, St. Joseph Hospital, continued servicing the area until the establishment of St. Elizabeth Hospital in Youngstown in 1911. Today, more than 250 Sisters of the Humility of Mary are involved in a wide variety of the Church's ministries, from education and housing to advocacy and social services, to spirituality and health care.
Frances Xavier was born in Aachen, Germany, to a wealthy and very religious family. Her father, Johann, was a needle factory owner and vice mayor of the city. Her mother, Maria, raised the Xavier children with strict discipline and in a French manner. When Frances was at the tender age of 13, her mother died of tuberculosis. Because she was the eldest daughter, she had to take over the management of the family home. It was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and Frances became keenly aware of the profound social misery around her. Because of her deep faith, Frances used her position as head of the household to purchase necessities for the poor of Aachen and to visit them.
A fire of holy love for my neighbor burned within me. I felt a great desire to seek out and love the Lord in the poor, the sick, and the unfortunate.
In 1841, Frances helped Father Joseph Istis set up a soup kitchen for the poor. Besides working in the soup kitchen and begging for food from parishioners, she also cared for the ill, cleaned their houses, and comforted the dying. After the death of her father in 1845, Frances entered religious life, founded a religious congregation, and became known as Mother Frances. In carrying out the healing mission of Jesus, it was Francis Xavier's vision to see Christ in the poor and to heal his wounds. The congregation grew rapidly. Sisters began by taking care of prostitutes and cholera patients. They set up soup kitchens, cared for the terminally and chronically ill, and took in young girls to protect them and teach useful skills. Sarah Peter, a woman from Cincinnati, Ohio, persuaded Mother Frances to send 5 sisters to care for the sick and the poor among the German immigrants of the city. In September of 1858, the sisters founded St. Mary's Hospital in Cincinnati. This new foundation was the beginning of the ministry of the Franciscan Sisters of the Poor in the United States. The sisters were responsible for nursing during the Civil War, maintaining orphanages, and building many hospitals. For more than 150 years, the Franciscan Sisters of the Poor have been ministering to the sick, feeding the hungry, housing the homeless, and caring for children.
Marguerite was born Marie Marguerite de la Jemeraye in Varennes, Quebec, and she was the eldest of 6 children. Her happy childhood was tragically disrupted by the death of her father when she was only 7 years old. At this young age, Marguerite learned to be a caregiver and helped her mother provide for her suddenly destitute family. Marguerite was fortunate to receive a good education from the Ursuline nuns in their convent in Quebec. And during this time, she developed a deep spirituality and love for Jesus. Upon her return home, she began to teach her younger brothers and sisters. Marguerite was very special. She seemed unusually compassionate as she reached out to others in their suffering and their joy. When she was 20 years old, Margaret fell in love with and married Françoise Youville. But it soon became evident that Françoise was insensitive and selfish in many ways. Marguerite had 6 children, 3 of whom died in infancy, and she was pregnant with her 6th child when Françoise became seriously ill. She cared for him until his death, and then a year later, her baby also died. At this low point in her life, not only did she care for her 2 surviving sons, but also she reached out to help those in greater need than herself. With a generous heart, she helped anyone in need of food, clothing, shelter, or love. Seeing Marguerite selflessly care for the poor inspired 3 other women who felt called to share in her mission. On December 31st, 1737, those women consecrated themselves to God to serve the poor. This was the founding of the Sisters of Charity of Montreal, the Grey Nuns.
For the greater glory of God, for the relief of the poor, we are united in pure charity to receive, feed, and support as many poor as we can take care of.
The sisters happily shared their home with boarders and destitute people until a cold night in January of 1745 when a fire destroyed their home. Marguerite then took over the duty to renovate the General Hospital. During the war between France and England in 1756, the sisters served and cared for the wounded soldiers on both sides of the war. On May 18, 1765, a fire that threatened the entire city of Montreal destroyed her own General Hospital. Marguerite was a courageous woman, and she said at that time, "My children, this house will never burn again." And she was right. With the help of her devoted sisters, the Sulpician priests, and many others, the hospital was rebuilt. In 1855, the Grey Nuns were called to respond to an epidemic in Toledo, Ohio, which was known at the time as the Black Swamp. This health ministry later became St. Vincent Mercy Medical Center. Despite many obstacles and challenges, Margaret Duville and the Grey Nuns have proven time and again that every trial in life can be an impetus to a new beginning. Today, St. Margaret Duville is known as the Mother of Universal Charity. The Grey Nuns ensured the future of their healthcare ministries by beginning Covenant Health Systems in 1983.
Catherine Macaulay was born into a wealthy family in Dublin at a time when Ireland was a land of sorrows, a land made miserable by political and religious prejudice. Her father, James, often gathered poor children into his home and taught them the Catholic faith. Catherine's father died when she was only 5 years old, but his compassionate spirit grew within her and influenced the rest of her life. After her mother's early death from tuberculosis, Catherine and her 2 siblings lived with various relatives. In 1803, Catherine was invited to reside with Catherine and William Callahan, and she took a position as a companion to Mrs. Callahan and cared for her as she declined in health. Mrs. Callahan was generous in giving to the poor and gave Catherine permission to visit the most destitute. It was from this experience that Catherine began to shape her own future in ministry. Catherine developed a very close relationship with the Callahans, and in 1822, when William Callahan died, she inherited their entire estate. Her vision was to provide education, protection, and a variety of services for poor women and children.
There are things which the poor prize more highly than gold, though they cost the donor nothing. Among these are the kind word, the gentle, compassionate look, and the patient hearing of their sorrows.
In 1827, Catherine opened the House of Mercy on Bagot Street in the heart of an affluent Dublin neighborhood. Her clear intention was to bring the rich together with the poor. The House of Mercy flourished, and Catherine's spirit attracted many volunteers. There were 200 girls enrolled in the school the first year. Catherine also trained women to visit and comfort the sick in a nearby hospital. And in 1831, Catherine, along with a core group of women, founded the Sisters of Mercy. As Catherine's compassion for the poor took root in the hearts of her companions, the gift of mercy spread across Ireland and England. In 1843, Sister Frances Ward and 7 companions traveled to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to establish the first U.S. congregation and the first Mercy Hospital. Today, the spirit of mercy is alive and growing throughout the world.
As associates of Catholic Health Partners, we stand on the shoulders of these brave women and all the men and women who have led our ministries through the years. How do you continue the work of our founders today? And what is your deepest wish for our ministry?